Here's how it happened. The valley folk lived by the slow river. They farmed their fields. They fished the water. Life was hard but simple. Up on the ridge folk lived different. Their land was rocky. They raised goats. They traded sometimes with the valley folk, but not often. There was always a quiet tension, old stories of wrongs. Both sides remembered things. Not big things, just small slights. Words spoken wrong, a path blocked once. Elara was a valley woman. Her family had a bucket. It was a good bucket, made of thick oak, bound with iron. Not fancy, but it held water well. It had been her grandmother's, then her mother's. Now it was hers. She used it every day to carry water from the river to her small garden. To her cooking fire. That bucket was important. It was part of her life. One morning, the sun was just rising, and Elara went out. She went to the river. The path was clear, the air was cool. She always left the bucket by the river's edge. Under a big willow tree, it was safe there. Everyone knew it was her bucket. No one would take it. Or so she thought. She got to the willow tree. She looked down. No bucket. Her heart beat fast. She looked again. Maybe it rolled away. She walked around the tree. She checked the bushes. Nothing. The bucket was gone. A cold feeling came over her. Someone took it. But who? She knew no one from the valley would take her bucket. They knew it. They respected it. It had to be someone else. She thought of the ridge folk. They sometimes came down to trade or just to watch. They lived close. Too close sometimes. They were known for being a bit rough. A bit quick to take things. Maybe it was one of them. Elara ran back to her house. Her husband, Kale, was just waking. She told him. Her voice shook. My bucket. It's gone. Someone took it. Kale frowned. He knew the bucket. He knew what it meant to her. He knew it meant something more. It was a slight, an insult, not just a lost tool. Are you sure? He asked. Yes, it was there last night. It is not there now. Kale went to the river himself. He looked around. He saw boot prints, not valley folk prints. These were harder, deeper, ridge folk boots. He knew the difference. His face got hard. They took it, he said. The ridge folk took your bucket. Word spread fast through the valley. From house to house, Elara's bucket was gone. Stolen by the ridge folk. People got angry. Not just for Elara, but for themselves. This was an insult to all of them. It felt like a warning. Or a dare. Old Man Wren was the elder. He was wise. He sat by his fire. Kale came to him. Elara came too. They told him what happened. Wren listened. His eyes were old, but they saw clear. A bucket, Wren said slow. A stolen bucket. It is more than a bucket, Kale said. It is our pride. They steal from us. They think they can do what they want. Wren nodded. He understood. This was not just about water. It was about respect. It was about borders. It was about who had the right. He sent a boy. A young boy. He was fast. He knew the paths. The boy went up the ridge. He carried a message. A simple message. Return the bucket. The valley folk waited. They watched the path. They hoped. But also, they feared. They knew the ridge folk. They were stubborn. They would not give it back easy. This small thing. This bucket. It had opened something up. A crack in the peace. A feeling of wrong. The young boy, Finn, climbed the steep path. He reached the ridge. The air was thinner there. The houses were scattered. Stone houses. Rougher than the valley ones. He found the ridge leader. A man named Boren. Boren was big, strong. He had a stern face. Finn gave Boren the message. The valley folk demand the return of Elara's bucket. It was stolen. Boren listened. He narrowed his eyes. Stolen, you say? He grunted. We took no bucket. Finn stood firm. It was taken from the river. Our folk saw your tracks. Boren laughed. A short, sharp sound. Tracks are just tracks. Maybe a fox took it. Maybe the river god. We have no bucket. And if we did, why would we give it back? We owe you nothing. Finn felt fear, but he held his ground. It is Elara's. It is important to her family. Then she should keep better watch, Boren said. He turned away. He dismissed Finn. Finn walked back down the path. His heart was heavy. He knew what this meant. He told Old Man Wren. He told Kale. He told Elara. The ridge folk denied it. They refused. A wave of anger washed over the valley. Not just anger, a deep sense of injustice. They took our bucket. They lied about it. They mocked us. This cannot stand, Kale said. His voice was low, dangerous. Old Man Wren sighed. He knew. What do you propose? We show them, Kale said. We show them we are not weak. We show them they cannot just take from us. The next day, Kale gathered some men. Not many, just a few. They went to the river, to the crossing point. It was a narrow part, with a ford. The ridge folk used it sometimes. To come down to the bigger market days, or to reach other parts of the valley, Kale and his men blocked the ford. They rolled big stones into the water. They piled logs. They made it impossible to cross. Let them walk the long way around, Kale said. Let them feel a little of what we feel. The word got to Boren on the ridge. The valley folk had blocked the ford. His people could not cross easy. Some of his goat herders were stuck on the other side. They could not bring their animals home. Boren was furious. They block our path. For a bucket they claim we took. He clenched his fists. They want to play games. We will play games. He called his own men. Strong men. They went down to the edge of the valley lands where the valley folk had a small patch of good grazing land. It's away from the river, but it was their land. The ridge folk drove their goats onto it. And hundreds of them. The goats ate the grass. They trampled the ground. They ruined the pasture. The valley folk saw this. They saw their land being destroyed. For no reason. Just spite. Just to hurt them back. Elara watched from her window. Her bucket, it was just a bucket. But look what it had caused. The anger in her community was boiling. Fear mixed with it. But anger was stronger. The tit-for-tat began. A few valley men went up the ridge at night. They unstacked a pile of firewood. Just scattered it. A small thing. But a nuisance. The ridge folk responded. They sneaked down. They cut the ropes on a fishing net. It drifted away. Lost. A bigger loss. The stakes were rising. The arguments grew louder. People in the valley talked of marching up the ridge, of taking back what was theirs, and more. People on the ridge talked of teaching the valley folk a lesson, of showing them who was tougher. Old Man Wren tried to talk sense. This is foolish. A bucket. It will lead to bloodshed. But his voice was softer now. It was getting lost in the noise of shouts, the noise of fear, the noise of growing hatred. The bucket was no longer just a bucket. It was a banner. It was a wound. It was a symbol of all the old grudges, all the unspoken resentments. It was the focus for a storm that was building fast, and no one knew how to stop it now. The small acts of spite grew into bigger ones. A stolen chicken here, a broken fence there. It wasn't just Kale and Boren anymore. Now it was everyone. Anyone could be involved. Anyone could feel the need to strike back. On the ridge, Boren stood before his people. His voice was loud. The valley folk think they can push us around. They block our paths. They ruin our sleep. They say we stole a bucket. A lie. They do this to make us look weak. To take our land, we must stand strong. His words fueled the anger. They made the ridge folk feel righteous. They made them feel threatened. In the valley, Old Man Wren saw it happening. He saw the shift, from indignation to a thirst for revenge. And Kale spoke of honor. They spit on us. We must show them we are men. Young men listened to Kale. They cleaned their tools, their farming tools, their hunting knives. They sharpened them. They became weapons. There were a few voices for peace. A woman named Mara in the valley. Her brother had married a ridge woman years ago. They had family on both sides. She spoke to Wren. This is madness. It started with nothing. It will end with everything lost. Wren agreed. But he felt powerless. The momentum was too great. On the ridge, a similar voice. A shepherd named Jor. He had friends in the valley. He knew good people there. He went to Boren. Leader, this is a mistake. The bucket is not worth this. Can we not talk? Can we not just find the bucket, even if it wasn't us? But Boren glared at him. You doubt your own people? You are a coward. Go tend your sheep. Leave the fighting to men. Jor fell silent. He saw the look in Boren's eyes. It was a look of certainty, a dangerous certainty. The leaders made decisions, but the people made the war. They talked. They argued. They remembered old slights. They believed the worst. They prepared. The valley folk started drilling. Not like soldiers, more like farmers learning to stand together, to hold a line. Kale showed them how to use their staves, how to protect each other. They made shields from old wagon wood. They felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. They were ready to defend their homes, their river, their honor. The ridge folk were already good with weapons. Many hunted. They knew how to move in the rough terrain. Boren made them practice. He told them stories of how the valley folk had wronged them in the past. He painted the valley folk as greedy, as soft, as a threat to their way of life. They gathered their spears, their heavy clubs, their hunting bows. Then came the incident that sealed it. A young ridge boy, no more than 12, was tending goats near the disputed grazing land. He wandered too close to the valley border. A valley man, hot-headed and tired of the constant tension, saw him. He thought the boy was trying to steal more grass. He chased the boy. He threw a stone. It hit the boy on the head, not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to bleed. The boy ran back to the ridge, crying, holding his head. When Bourne saw the boy, he saw red. They attack our children now. They draw first blood. The boy's father was there. His eyes were wild. We must make them pay. In the valley, the man who threw the stone was afraid. He knew he went too far, but his fear was mixed with pride. He was on our land. He was provoking us. Old Man Wren heard the news. He heard of the bleeding boy. He heard of the valley man's boast. He knew it was over. There was no turning back. The small spark of a stolen bucket had grown. It had caught fire. Now, it was a wildfire, and it was coming for them all. The valley folk expected the ridge folk to come down. The ridge folk expected the valley folk to come up. Both sides got ready, not for a fight, but for a war over a bucket, or what the bucket had become, a war over everything. The morning light was cold. It was quiet at first. Too quiet. Then came the sound. From the ridge, a war horn, a deep, mournful sound. It echoed through the valley. It sent shivers down spines. Cale stood at the front. With his men, they waited. By the edge of their fields, where the high ground started to climb towards the ridge. They had chosen this spot. It was good for defense. Then they saw them, the ridge folk. A line of them, maybe 100 men, armed with spears, clubs, axes, and behind them, some carrying bows. They moved fast, down the slope, like a torrent of stones. Fear hit the valley folk. A pure, cold fear. But then anger rose too. They were coming to their homes, to their families. Over a bucket, stand firm, Cale yelled. His voice was ragged. The first clash was loud. Terrifying. Rocks rained down from the ridge folk. Then they charged. The valley folk met them. Sticks and staves against spears and axes. It was chaos, shouts, grunts, the clang of wood on wood. The wet sound of flesh. Elara was in her house, with the other women and the children. They huddled together. They heard the sounds, every scream, every crash. She closed her eyes. Her bucket. Where was her bucket? She hadn't thought about it in days. Now it felt so far away. So unimportant. Yet it was the cause of all this. The fighting was fierce. The ridge folk were used to rough terrain. They were strong. But the valley folk fought for their homes, for their ground. They knew every dip and rise. Young Finn, the boy who carried the message, was there. He was scared, but he held a heavy stick. He saw his neighbor fall. A ridge man swung an axe. Finn jumped in. He swung his stick. It hit the man's arm. The man cried out. It was not a heroic fight. It was messy and ugly. Hours passed. It felt like days. The ground became muddy, red with blood. Both sides lost men. Good men. Men who were fathers, sons, brothers. Cale saw Old Man Wren get hit. A rock caught him on the head. Wren fell. He didn't get up. Cale felt a surge of cold fury. This was too much. This was not a game. Boren, on the ridge side, saw his own men fall. He saw his young cousin, no more than a boy, caught in the fight. He saw the pain, the loss. But he couldn't stop. He had to keep pushing to show them, to win. The valley folk were pushed back, step by step. The ridge folk were too many, too well armed. Cale gave the order. Fall back! To the river, they retreated, dragging their wounded, leaving their dead. The ridge folk cheered, a hollow, tired sound. They had taken the high ground. They had pushed the valley folk from their fields. That night, the valley was a place of mourning. The river ran slow, but the tears flowed fast. Fires burned, but not for warmth. For the dead. For the lost, on the ridge, there was no celebration, only exhaustion, and the same bitter taste of loss. They had won this small battle, but at what cost? They tended their wounded, they buried their dead. The war had started. It was not glorious. It was not heroic. It was just brutal. And it was far from over. No one spoke of the bucket anymore. It was forgotten in the screams, in the blood, in the endless, aching grief. Now it was about survival. About revenge, about who would be left standing when the sun finally set on this madness. The war dragged on. It wasn't a series of big battles, it was skirmishes, raids, ambushes. The ridge folk held the high ground, they could descend and strike. The valley folk hid. They guarded their river, they tried to hold what little they had left. Spring came and went. Then summer. The fields lay untended in places, or they were fought over. Harvests were small. People went hungry, both sides. Trade stopped. The river, once a source of life, became a dividing line of death. Elara saw her garden wither. She had no bucket to water it. Even if she did, she was too afraid to go to the river alone. She lost her husband, Kale. He fell in a raid near the crossing, shot by an arrow. She saw him one morning. Then he was gone. Just another name in the growing list. On the ridge, Boren watched his people suffer. His flock of goats was much smaller. Many had been eaten, or lost. His family too felt the hunger. He lost a brother, then a son. He walked with a limp now, from a wound that never quite healed. He looked at the valley. It was quiet, too quiet. Was anyone left? The land itself was scarred, trees cut down for defenses, houses burned, paths overgrown. The old ways were gone. Everything was just survival. Finally, neither side could fight anymore. There were too few men left, too little food, too much grief. It wasn't a surrender, it was an exhaustion, a slow, silent ceasefire that just happened. No one blew a horn. No one signed anything. They just stopped. They just went home, if they had a home left. The valley folk found their way back to their scattered homes. They looked at the ruins, they looked at the empty spaces where people used to be. An old man, Ren, was gone. Kale was gone. Many were gone. The ridge folk went back to their rocky homes. Their leader, Boren, sat alone. His face was etched with sorrow. His people were shattered. His family broken. Years passed. The land slowly healed. But the people didn't. They remembered. They taught their children to remember. The valley folk told stories of the ridge folk's treachery. The stolen bucket, the first blood. The ridge folk told stories of the valley folk's aggression. The blocked ford, the stone that hit a child. No one spoke of the actual bucket anymore. No one knew where it was. It was probably lost in the first days of fighting, or broken, or just forgotten in some corner. It didn't matter. It was never about the bucket. It was about pride, about old wounds, about fear, and about the simple, terrible way a small spark can light a big fire. Elara lived out her days by the quiet river. She had a new bucket now, a plain, simple one. It wasn't her grandmother's, it didn't have history, she used it to tend her small garden. She watched her grandchildren play, she never spoke of the war, not directly, but in her eyes you could see the shadow, the memory of what a simple stolen bucket could cost, what it took from them all. A whole way of life. For nothing, but for everything.